Hey you guys, I want to talk to you today about refeeding syndrome. This is really important if you fast regularly, which I know most of us participating in this channel do, or at least want to. So this is something that I've always been afraid of, and it is something that I have finally gotten myself into and am trying to dig myself out of. This is not a light matter. Refeeding syndrome is very real and potentially life-threatening. So if you're experiencing any of the symptoms I talk about, or if you know, like you've done your research, you know what refeeding syndrome is and what it potentially feels like, if you think you're actually experiencing it, please go see a doctor. It's not a minor thing. You should get your electrolytes checked, and if you're actually developing refeeding syndrome, which is very hard to get under control once it starts snowballing, you need to get intravenous intervention and have a doctor track you really closely for a few days and get you back on track, because it's very hard to do when you're at home. So that being said, please go see a doctor if you're actually experiencing this. I've heard of refeeding syndrome a lot in my research around fasting. I've never really understood the science behind it before, which I think is why usually by day 2 of refeeding, I feel pretty invincible because like nothing terrible is happening. And then I tend to overeat when I'm refeeding. Now I understand why people do this in like supervised fasting centers, because right now it would be very nice to have a doctor tracking my levels and telling me exactly what to eat, when to eat it, and telling me exactly what not to eat and when not to eat it right now. But I do not have that. I am on my own. Okay, so in the most simplified sense, refeeding syndrome is a problem that arises when your body gets used to having zero anabolic pathways, or at least working on zero anabolic pathways, which happens when you're in a fasted state. Anabolic pathways in this case essentially just means the process of synthesizing fresh glycogen, fat, and protein for storage or use of energy. Instead, your body has gotten settled into this pattern of just breaking down stored energy sources, which is called catabolic. It's a completely different pathway, and when you're in a completely fasted state, since your body isn't using any anabolic, like fresh synthesis type pathways, they all just completely shut down. But then when you start eating again, there's this stimulation of glycogen, fat, protein synthesis, and all these anabolic pathways wake back up. They start functioning again. Now, this means that electrolytes and micronutrients like that are also being taken back into the cells, which they haven't been doing for quite a while. The issue is that when these micronutrients or electrolytes are being used all of a sudden, their use outpaces how quickly they're being replaced. And obviously this results in some sort of a deficiency, which leads to potential failure of your nervous and musculoskeletal systems, and then leads to failure of organs, and clearly potentially can lead to death, which is why we don't play around with this thing. The issue I don't understand within this, I understand the mechanism of what I just described. What I don't understand is there is like an irrationality that happens within your body during this time, and this snowballs for whatever reason, and it becomes very difficult to get under control yourself. This is why we always say just go see a frickin' doctor and have them get it under control for you, because of this like weird, your body just being like super dramatic and getting out of control. So that part I don't completely understand why it happens, but it does. So this whole process can be sped up the more that you eat, and this like drama of it really is like influenced by how long you've been fasting or how long your body's been like working kind of in that out of whack way. Now, to use an example, myself as an example, because this has been super fun. I had just completed a 22-day fast, which was the longest fast I'd ever done to date. Prior to that, the longest fast I had done was 10 days. And I did refeed myself too quickly after that 10-day fast, but it was much easier to recover from than after 22 days. So anyway, I fasted 22 days, and it was the end of day 2 of that refeeding. So I had already been feeding myself for 2 whole days, and I knew I had been eating too fast, too much, too fast. Like, I knew it, but I didn't feel bad yet, so I was like, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. End of day 2, I started getting extremely nauseous, like big bad nauseous, like all of the red lights were going off inside my body, super nauseous, super dizzy, and kind of confused, which that's what started making me like super nervous. I got really tired and fatigued, and then my heartbeat started feeling a little bit off, which is when I got really scared. So overall, I just had this really terrible, like, doomy, unwell feeling. I realized clearly I have finally done it. I've eaten too quickly, too high calorie after too long of a fast, and I have officially given myself the dreaded refeeding syndrome. Now, I'm going to say it again. The easiest and fastest way to get this taken care of is just go to the friggin' hospital. I am doing this from the comfort of my own home for now, but I absolutely would not recommend that to anyone else, ever. But for your information, what I'm doing to get this under control is that I'm cutting back my calorie intake quite a lot, cutting back that calorie intake so that my body can focus on balancing its electrolytes. The major players that I need to get under control are my potassium, magnesium, phosphate, and thiamine, which is your B1. So while I'm in this calorie restriction, I'm taking potassium in my water bottle, as I always do. I have talked about it before. I don't know if I've ever shown you it, but I get 4,700 milligrams a day of potassium regardless of if I'm fasting or not. If I'm fasting, it's 100% coming from no salt. I just toss this in my water. I measure it very carefully, so I know I'm getting 4,700 milligrams, essentially no less, no more, around there. Every day when I'm eating my normal diet, I just keep track of what I'm eating and how much potassium I'm getting in the food I'm eating, and then I supplement up to 4,700 milligrams with no salt in my water. It's the easiest, quickest, most efficient way that I've learned to get potassium. If you have any tips, please share. And then right now, during this time of like having a snowballing deficiency, I'm taking 3 different types of magnesium. Again, this is not normal, and I'm not going to be doing this long term. This is to get myself out of a snowballing deficiency. The 3 different magnesiums that I'm taking right now, I'm taking citrate in the morning, I'm taking oxides somewhere in the middle of the day, and then I'm taking glycinate before I go to sleep. Full doses of all 3, and then I'm taking a B1 supplement, 100 milligrams a day for my thiamine, and then I'm just taking a normie, like, daily multivitamin to cover all my bases, to make sure I'm getting a bunch of other vitamins and minerals that I might have been missing out on, that my body needs to learn how to regulate again. And then I'm drinking a bunch of homemade beef bone broth for my phosphates. I made it myself. I loaded this with marrow bones, oxtails with meat on them, and then ribs with meat on them. So this is like this is chock full of nutrients. I did not make it with vegetables, so it's fairly bland, but I don't like vegetables, so I like it this way. I do kind of load it up with just really high grade sea salt, and it's tasty for me. I love it, and it's packed with nutrients, so that's all I care about. So yeah, that's essentially what I'm focusing on right now to get my levels under control. Potassium, magnesium, phosphates, thiamine. The downside of doing this all myself is that everything I'm doing is mainly intuitive and symptom based. I don't have like doctors reports or tests to go off of, which is why I would not recommend it to anyone else. I only have what I feel and what I see, and that's not amazing. I am sharing my experience though, for those of you who are as obnoxiously stubborn as this little heart is. So, once I start feeling amazing again and my electrolyte imbalance symptoms are all cleared up and I feel good, I will start increasing my calorie intake by about 30% a day. Not a day. I'll increase my calorie intake about 30%. I'll let it sit there for about 3 to 5 days. Make sure that my body is able to balance its electrolytes at that calorie intake. And then I'll up it another 30%. Let it sit there for 3 to 5 days. Do the same thing. Make sure my body is balancing itself really well. And I'll just keep doing that until I get back to my normal calorie intake. And now y'all know I am carnivore, so I do eat very high calorie when I'm eating a normal diet. I'm usually eating between 2,000 and 3,000 calories a day. So it'll take a little while to get back to normal because I'm starting this whole process at about 700 to 800 calories a day ish. I made that calculation based on 10 to 20 calories of intake per kilogram. Now I'm 130 pounds, 5'6"-ish, 130 pounds, which means my starting intake for this whole process is going to be somewhere around 589 calories on the super low end, or double that up to like 1178 calories at the high end. So if we're going to round and make it easier to understand, I'm trying to get somewhere between 600 and 1200 calories a day right now in this first step. Now I am trying to stay on the low end of that just because I feel so terrible, and the closer you are to where you've started, the better. So obviously I was at 0 calorie intake for 22 days. So staying as close to that 580 mark or 589 mark as I can is where I'm trying to. But if I creep up to that 1200 mark, I'm not gonna freak out. But if I continue to feel terrible, I will I'll cut it lower. The problem is that I am carnivore, so most of the food I eat is fairly high calorie. Bone broth, not as much, so that's good. I can eat a lot of that. But if I am eating things like eggs right now and bits of meat. But man, those are all high calorie. Those do add up fairly quickly. So it's hard to stay low calorie for me right now. Although for those of us that are on this journey together, I am carnivore. I am incorporating fermented foods into my diet for the long term moving forward, and I'm starting that right now. So that helps because I can eat a little bit more of their fermented food and stay on that lower calorie spectrum while I need to right now, while my body kind of regulates its electrolytes. But that will be a long-term thing moving forward. So I'm not a strict carnivore. I don't know what you're gonna call that. I don't know what bucket I put myself into. Some people call it ketovore, some people call it hyper carnivore, whatever. I'm just gonna be mostly carnivore, but I also eat fermented food and maybe some fruit in the summertime when it's local and seasonal to wherever I am at any given moment. So anyway, I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk about with refeeding. Please just take care of yourself, you guys. I know most of us participating in this channel are either regular fasters or trying to be regular fasters, so just please take care of yourself. Our bodies are really cool and really powerful, and it is our responsibility to listen to them and take care of them well. So let's try to do that, I guess. Love to all of you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.